And welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, an introduction to Photo Pro Expeditions, presented by a stellar panel of NatHab photography expedition leaders. Court Whalen will be our MC, and he'll be joined by Brad Josephs, Drew Hamilton, and Colby Bruckfist. Each is an accomplished nature photographer, and collectively, they have nearly 100 years of guiding experience. So with that, let's get started, gentlemen. We are honored to have you with us today, and Court, I'm going to hand it on over to you.
Fantastic, Ted. Thank you so much. And I think we agreed before this that between the four of us, we had 400 years of collective guiding experience. So I don't know where the 100 came in, but nevertheless, no, it's a certainly impressive number. It's a more impressive cohort of extraordinary expedition leaders that I'm joined by. These three guys have certainly written the book on guiding with NatHab around the world. So it's such a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to hear from them on this really momentous kind of unveiling. This is my normal sort of Tuesday webinar slot. So if you followed me or joined in the past, you'll probably have heard me dropping some hints about this program over the last couple of months. It is here. It is at fruition. We're talking about it today. We're launching 3 new trips, 2 in Alaska and 1 in Yellowstone, that are our Photo Pro expeditions. So in a second, I'm going to hand this over to Brad. He's going to be first up to talk about some of the bear expeditions in Alaska. But I wanted to give a little bit of a kind of a bird's eye, sort of cursory, big picture overview of what we're trying to do with the program. We're going to get into specifics here in just a moment, but in terms of the big picture, you're probably wondering, okay, Photo Pro, what exactly is going on? Do you need to be a professional for it? You already do photo tours and photo adventures. How is that different? Maybe even from our classic trips, because I often like to say, you know, every trip we do is a photo trip because you're going to come home with awesome photos. But we now have this new lineup that is really, the way I look at Photo Pro expeditions is it's for the experienced photographer that wants more of a photo workshop in location. You don't need to be a pro, just have a pro mentality going into the trip. This differs from our existing photo programs and photo adventures because those are oftentimes designed as a classic natural habitat trip first and foremost. They have a good bit of variety in the itinerary, more comprehensive in the country, in the state, in the region, and then it adds the photo element into it, not sacrificing the nature interpretation, the variety of experiences, you know, kind of something for everyone. Those are our traditional photo tours that we've been doing for many years and are still going to be developed and expanded and very important to us. When we talk about the Photo Pro expeditions, it's kind of a whole new level up. And I might even say, just to kind of set the stage, almost like a couple levels up from there. It's really for the highest level of photo instruction, perhaps, and this is kind of a weird thing to say, but perhaps at the expense of the normal natural history presentations and natural history interpretation that we might do in the field. This is a whole new type of trip where we prioritize the photos, the photo opportunities, the camera learning, the photography style learning, the photo processing, editing. We do that first. That's the first goal of the trip. Photo workshops first and foremost, and then the rest of the stuff is kind of to get those better photos, to get the more well-rounded portfolio, maybe staying in locations a little bit more long, more time. The other thing that makes our Photo Pro leaders, you know, we obviously have the very best photography leaders in the business, but the other thing that makes them different from normal photo workshop leaders is they're also some of the best naturalists and wildlife biologists in the business, as you know, if you've ever been on trips with any of these three great leaders. So what that does is it provides another level of understanding for your photo opportunities to understand animal migration patterns and daily movements and routines of bears and wolves, getting the trained senses of anticipation of those coveted photos that come from a really, really intense level of understanding of the animal, the ecosystem, and the natural habitat. So what I would say is really added to this is that you get that biology eye to the photographic eye, and you're going to simply get the best photo opportunities, the best photo instruction through those combined techniques and efforts. Just sliding through a few photos here. So as far as what goes into the trips and what the trips will be different in terms of itinerary, we're going to go into that in just a second, of course, starting with Brad here, but we're going to be talking about things like smaller group sizes. We're going to be talking about things on these trips where we have more picnic meals. This might be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Just simply put more time in the field. And another big commonality is more time in specific areas. Like I said, one of the big differences between our classic natural habitat trips and our classic photo tours is that, you know, those do have very, very well-rounded itineraries. We're moving quite a bit to see diverse landscapes, diverse habitats, many different animals on a grand tour of Alaska, for instance. As we get more specific, the photo opportunities and more immersion really come to the surface. So again, spending more time in, digging deeper, concentrating on getting the most varied photos of a specific place. We're expecting through that combination of factors, we're going to have a really, really robust line of trips. We're going to get some great photos. And I think that, one of the things that we're going to really benefit from, everyone's going to benefit from, is the group composition. We're very hopeful to notice that we get people that are indeed more photo pro minded. So the group cohesion, things like shared learning among group members, there's going to be a higher level of photo interpretation within the group, not just from the leadership as well. So lots of exciting things to come. And I will say, just as a quick teaser, we're going to talk about 3 trips here today, but frankly, we're rolling out many more than that in the coming months, in the coming years. So we join you to enjoy the next few presentations from these guides, but also keep us posted. We'll keep you posted on what new trips will be coming down the pipeline. There's already word out there that we're doing Madagascar and things like Botswana and Namibia. So a lot more to come, but without further ado, let me go ahead and pass the mic over to Brad, and we're gonna zoom ourselves over to Alaska, where we're gonna look at some of the bear trips we're gonna be doing up there. So Brad, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thank you. Boy, I just got quite an adrenaline rush. Just as we went live, I mysteriously lost internet, but luckily was able to get it restored. So anyway, I'll do the best I can. Hopefully everything's good. I'm on satellite, kind of in the remote area of Arkansas, but this is a pretty complex trip, and we have lots of stuff to cover with all these 4 guys. So right now, the trip that I'm going to be leading this fall in September is on the coast of Katmai National Park. So just to orient you in Alaska, here's Kodiak, here's the Alaska Peninsula, and this is the coast of Katmai National Park versus the interior of Katmai National Park, which is just on the other side of the mountains that Drew will be talking about at the end. Both fantastic places, very different. So here's the coast of Katmai National Park. The trip starts over here where my mouse is in Kodiak. And we spend several days in Kodiak and looking at marine mammals, different cultural aspects of Kodiak. It's a really cool couple days. And then we board a float plane and fly over here to this remote, rugged coast, which has one of the most amazing background scenery backdrops of anywhere really in the world, and as dense as any bear population on Earth. And then the Brooks Falls region that Drew will be talking about would be over into this area, just on the other side of the mountains. So like I said, if you've never flown a float plane before, it's quite an exciting aspect of these trips. And that's how we get out to this very remote area that's not accessible by road. And there's no infrastructure, there's no civilization at all. So that's why we stay on our grizzly ship, which is a bear boat. And it's an old converted Bering Sea crab boat, and it allows us to comfortably travel around from bay to bay. So pretty much there is no itinerary on these trips. It's just when we meet the group, we have a good pulse and a handle on where the best bears are, where the best photography is, and we just have the freedom to move around and travel to get to where the best bears are. Now this picture, I think, kind of shows a little bit about one of my favorite aspects of photography when I'm out guiding a trip, is I love to capture people in the moment with doing what they love to do. Like here, it's sitting with his mom and cubs, and I think this picture says a lot about this trip and about what I like. First of all, and I'm going to talk about this more later, I'm making up the background with something really interesting. Glaciers, mom and cub brown bears. But I think another thing is it makes this trip super special is that it shows our ability to basically get down on the ground with the bears at eye level, and there's a trust relationship that's built up. So I think that these images, I mean, of course, I give all these images to the clients for them to use, and then not have to put in the catalogs and websites and stuff. But I just love capturing these moments of 2 kind of arch enemies in North America, the brown bear, the grizzly bear, or the coastal grizzly bear, and humans, but getting along. And it shows kind of what happens, the end result of if we treat these animals with respect and operate on their terms, they're totally willing to get along with us, which is a lot different when bears walk into areas of human habitation. So this is kind of one of the tricks of this is, and we've been guiding out here. I think I was one of the first guides to kind of develop the techniques of these programs and how to get along with the bears and build up a multi-generation, a 25-year relationship is, we sit down. It's a chess game. We don't approach the bears. The guide will make an estimated guess, educated guess on where the bear is going to be. We go settle down there first. Then the bear feels comfortable to get close to us. And what that does is it allows us to get these fantastic images, again, at eye level, fill in the background of the picture, which is kind of one of my themes of teaching people how to photograph, is pay just as much attention to what fills up the rest of the frame as the subject. And I did a webinar, I'm going to do a webinar tomorrow actually on how to specifically photograph properly mothers and cubs. So I'm just going to tease you with this picture image, and that this trip is fantastic for mom and cubs. So I'm not going to get in too much into detail. Just tune in tomorrow and I'll talk more about settings and techniques on how to really capture these magic moments with mothers and cubs, and also cubs themselves interacting and playing. And so these are images from June. Now, in 2022, we're going to be offering the same pro photo trip in June. And we will have other NatHab trips with different programs operating this, maybe, depending on COVID, this June. But this will be something that you guys might want to think about for 2022. But for this fall, it's going to be fishing season in early September, which I'm not going to say it's better or worse. People say, what's the best time? They're both fantastic. So in June, again, I'll switch back to this one. You get more of these intimate moments before the salmon have come in, where there's a lot more time for the families to play. And we're also in an area that's got a bit more glacier backdrops and things like that. So, and more unique behaviors. But again, in September, the bears are full on fishing mode. So we get those iconic, amazing images of bears catching fish. Here's just a teaser. The last webinar that I did last week was how to photograph bears behavior with the quest for food. And the highlight, most of it was about how to basically catalog and document in images properly bears fishing. So I went into a lot more of the technical details. So that webinar has been recorded. And so if you want kind of more details on how to photograph fishing bears, I'm not going to waste everybody else's time or take up everybody else's time doing that. You can watch last week's webinar. So I just love these kind of images and these scenes of capturing these moments where you got this miracle from the ocean show up and all these bears are dependent on it. And it just fuels this beautiful population of bears, and to watch them do what they do best, which is catch salmon. And again, this image kind of shows what I like to do is you see in the background, the 2/3 of the picture that are not the bear itself, which is, the mother. It's telling a story about their biology and their life history, of their struggle to get calories in the rest of the frame, like these 3 cubs watching mom go out and watching her, learning how she fishes for salmon. It's the same thing. It's just using the background to tell the pictures. And that's one of the things that I really work on when I'm guiding photo trips, is to get people to really pay attention to what's in the background. Now, what you will give up in this season is you'll have less time where the bears are snuggling and playing, the mothers and cubs, because they have a serious job to do, which is really put on tremendous amount of weight. But what you give up a little bit in the playtime and the snuggling and the nursing, you got fishing. Now, as you get into the later part of the summer, these are first-year cubs. They're big and strong enough, and the salmon have already started to spawn. They're easier to catch. So you can get sometimes these fantastic moments of a bear catching its first fish as a 6-month-old, or maybe a flounder that's gone up into the river looking for salmon scraps when the tide was up, and then the tide races out and he gets trapped. And a spring cub you get to watch a spring cub, first-year cub, catch its first fish. The bears are pretty mellow. Well, we just sit on the bank, and the bears we have our trust. We have the bears' trust, and you can get and just focus on getting some really close portraits where you can get eye contact as those cubs are looking around, mostly for other bears, but just to show the intensity of this behavior. I love just getting eye contact with the bears, and then always paying attention to, if you have something interesting in the background, like another bear, using your aperture to control your depth of field, or to pick up that image, of the bears back there a little bit more in focus, or use a shallow depth of field to blur it out so you can accentuate the portrait of the cub's face. So I just love the bear portraits, especially if you can get these iconic features that they have, like these super huge claws. The wet bear fur during fishing season adds so much texture to the images. And you can see there's lots of gnats out there too. And also, during these trips, we will pay attention to. On my last webinar, basically, I took this picture and I showed on Lightroom during the webinar how I got this and how I switched to the black and white and these kind of things. The other thing is I like to be, if possible, of course, ethics are very first. You don't ever want to get in the bear's way. So you cannot affect the bear's behavior, but if possible, and I think this is one of the things that defines this trip among other bear trips, is the ability to get on eye level with the bear, or even in this case, the bear is above us, standing very close. I'm on my belly, and you get this eye level perspective, which is very, very dramatic for these kind of images that you cannot get if you're photographing from a platform or up on a raised bank or shooting down on the bears or in a vehicle or even in a boat. You have to be kind of on the bank with the bears. The bears look beautiful in September, as they do in June, because they've got their winter coat in June left over, and then in September they've filled out and they've got their new coat. So they really, in June and September is when the bears definitely look the best. Ted, are you guys getting me okay?
Sure thing, Brad. Yep, coming through clear.
Good.
The images are fantastic.
Great. And then when you have these kind of salmon fishing bears, you've got a lot of bears in one small area, and you can get these very, very iconic scenes of the battle that bears have, the competition. So those are going to be some of the trophy images that we hope to get. And as a NatHab guide that has tons of experience with bears, it's about predicting when these conflicts are going to happen and getting your folks ready with a high shutter speed and to get them settled down and to kind of know what the bears are going to do 10 minutes before they do it. And that's one of the secrets to getting these kind of images. And the Katmai Coast, as I said, has got some of the greatest background images, background scenes to fill up the rest of the frame with, be it a glacier, a studded mountain range, or in September, you can fill the rest of the frame up with the early fall color, which I love it. See the red leaves are fireweed, which most of the summer are beautiful magenta flowers, but those also turn bright red very first, and so you can get some fall colors in there as well. Fill up the rest of the frame with a cascading stream, being on even a little bit below eye level here. Also, one of the key parts about September is you get a beautiful low angle light because the sun is a lower angle. So you can see that nice early morning light. So in September, it's easier, more convenient as the sun rises and sets, basically rises later and sets earlier. You have a better chance, easier chance of getting what I love is to photograph bears at dawn. So you're filling up the rest of the frame with a gorgeous sky of twilight, either dusk or dawn. And these are backlight, and that's another technique. Or fill up the rest of the frame with a waterfall at slow exposure. So there's so much to talk about. I'm wrapping up here and just kind of a teaser, but there's also a lot of other awesome wildlife that we see on these trips or have the opportunity to see. So here's a little collection of wolf images. Other marine mammals such as sea otters, orcas, seals, sea lions. And we're not going to be focused, and this isn't maybe the best place to go for these creatures, but we do encounter some pretty awesome, very unique experiences for images here. And of course, it goes without saying that there's lots of bald eagles, which everybody loves, in which you can have either a glacier in the background or maybe even a bear. And then other iconic birds of Alaska, such as puffins, depending on the time of year and where we are, bears being our major focus, but trying to photograph puffins in flight. More puffins, two species, horned and tufted, and also oyster catchers, which are really amazing. Again, look at the oyster catcher picture, filling up the rest of the frame with a big volcano in the background. Okay, that's it for me. If you want to see more of my stuff, I have a blog that I do for NatHab. And it's Alaska Bears and Wolves, oneword.com. And then you can always go to my Instagram page, or Brad Joseph's Photos, to see images from Churchill to China, Borneo, and then lots more Alaska shots. And that's it for my turn. Hope I didn't take too long, guys.
Oh, great stuff, Brad. Wow, tantalizing photos. I mean, you can see why this is one of the very first trips we want to showcase in this Photo Pro program. Just absolutely amazing, the diversity of photos, but the immersion in the landscape, this idea of being out in the field, maximizing time from dawn to dusk. Those last photos of the sunrise, sunset shots, unreal. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. So but wait, there's more. So we're leaving the bears behind in Alaska, but we're going to another one of the natural wonders of the world. We're gonna join Colby in Yellowstone National Park. Oddly enough, in a little bit more of a wintry time period. You think of Alaska, that was the summer. We're going to Yellowstone in the winter, where we're viewing one of the other icons of nature, none other than the Colby Brockfist. No, the other icon of nature, of course, being the wolves of Yellowstone. Lots of other wildlife to be had. Colby, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Court. Hey, can you just confirm for me that you can see the image on my screen of a bear?
Yep, looks perfect.
Yeah, perfect, thanks. So I thought this would be a fun transition. We're actually starting off with an extraordinary type of picture here, maybe something not very characteristic of all the winter trips, but I thought this would be a fun way to transition from Brad's incredible presentation. You know, I was really struck, Brad, by the quality and caliber of the images that you have, and you know, just to be there with the bears where they're comfortable, to be there with great backgrounds and in wonderful light. You make it look easy, and I know that it's not easy. And I think that's what you and Drew and Court like bring to so many of these NatHab programs is that your strong understanding of the ecosystems and these the animals' behavior, to be able to get that body of work with you out there, Brad. I would think that would be worth the price of admission for everybody. You know, we have similar. Yeah, I mean it. We have similar things going on in Yellowstone, and as Court said, we're here in the wintertime. This picture of the interior grizzly bear was actually taken in late March. And so if you're there sort of at the very end of the season, there's the really unique opportunity to see some of these big boars, the male bears, come out of their hibernation first. So they come down from their winter dens, and sometimes we're able to see them dig out frozen carcasses of other animals, usually the big ungulates, the herbivores, like elk or bison. They'll just smell them and dig them out of the snow, and that's their first meal. Anyway, I thought that would be a fun transition. Again, not characteristic of all of the trips, but here we are. It's wintertime in Yellowstone. So some of the things that we're really after, of course, are the pictures of the bison. And the classic picture everybody really goes for here is of the frosty bison. And there's all sorts of opportunities to take pictures of bison when we're out there. But really, there's a great diversity in the wintertime in Yellowstone. And as a photographer, I really appreciate that diversity, because you can show up to one place, spend 8 to 10 days there, and end up with this catalog of images that incorporates a lot of different species, a lot of different backdrops, different landscapes, and we focus just as much on the landscape imagery as we do in the wildlife imagery on this. And I think that's one of the great things about the Yellowstone trip, is that, you know, as a professional photographer with a lot of different arrows in your own quiver, like you probably have different lenses, you know how to take different types of images in different situations. Of course, we're there to help you with that, but it's a place where you can really use the diversity of your own skill set and equipment. There's a little something for everybody, whether or not you want macro stuff, you want wildlife stuff, you want big landscapes, nice light, moving subjects, whatever it might be. And I think these two pictures here, showcase how we can do that with wildlife. You know, first of all, just being out in the snowstorm is something that your average photographer is not going to do. We do have to contend a little bit with the conditions in Yellowstone, but the payoff of the wintertime is we don't have all of the throngs of crowds. And so we have time to spend with these animals. We can move around with the animals in ways that you can't do in the summertime, when the parking lots and even the sides of the roads and every single meadow is just full of people and there's no room to move. And so not only do we have really unique circumstances here that really showcase the seasonality of the lives of these animals and of this place. But as a photographer, it gives us a lot more leeway to be able to move around within the park in the wintertime. And so we have all sorts of opportunities. And so an example of being able to move around and create our own opportunities is this nice little fox. I took this image 2 years ago on our regular photo trips. And this is an instance where we were driving from place to place with a goal in mind, but we saw this fox emerge from the forest on the opposite side of a meadow near a stream. And we were able to just pull over, jump out, set up our cameras, and wait for this fox to come walking towards us from across the meadow. And that's something you just can't do in the summertime when things are so busy. And so the winter is a really fun and it's an exciting time to be there. But as a photographer, it's also a very inspiring time to be there, as opposed to sometimes it can be frustrating in the summertime when you're vying for position with a lot of other people. And I thought I'd talk about the conditions just for a second. We are out there in the winter time. Of course, we have all of the equipment that you will need to be comfortable out in the winter time. And that starts with your personal equipment. You can see the gentleman in the rear is wearing one of our large parkas. This particular day wasn't very cold. It was, probably just above freezing. The snow is blowing in from the mountains that are up above where it's actually colder, and we're down in the valleys. But we have hand warmers for everyone. We have neck gaiters for everyone. And then we also have these specialized vehicles. I'll show you a picture of the vehicles in a second. We can always get inside the vehicles and warm up. So it's actually pretty comfortable to be out taking images. And of course, the guides, we're out there all of the time, and you can come and go from the warm environment in and out and shoot as you please. So it actually ends up being pretty comfortable and very easy to manage yourself there, even though it's quite cold out. And this is what a typical day looks like. You've seen some pictures of animals in the snow and people in the snow sort of getting snow blown. But of course, the number of days that it snows are far fewer than the number of days where it's quite beautiful. And being away from the coast means that we have a lot of days where there's blue sky in the middle of the winter. It's just too darn cold there to hold any moisture up in the sky. And so we have these bright, beautiful, sunny days. It makes for some wonderfully fun photography. You can see the tracks moving through the snow there. Only a few minutes before, we were taking pictures of a moose walking across that little creek there. I snapped this image of the scene of these folks right at the end as they were cleaning up to sort of capture that moment. It's always fun for people to show their friends back home, oh, here's the scene, here's my picture, and they can tell that story. And so I like to take a lot of pictures of people doing their thing as opposed to taking images of the animals sometimes. And of course, we're there as the photo guides to help you get the good pictures, right? That's always worth mentioning. I know that there's been, I have to admit, I've been on photo expeditions with some of these sort of famous photographers. They're so concerned about getting the best image there so they look good in front of everybody that they're not really paying a lot of attention to the guests. Maybe you've experienced that before with some of the professionals. Myself, I know my colleagues here, being in the travel industry, we know what you guys are looking for. We're here for the guest experience. We want you to get the good pictures. It's not a competition. We're there all the time. We have all sorts of unique opportunities, and we'll certainly be picking up our cameras and shooting once you guys are all settled and doing your thing. But our primary focus is making sure that you all get the good images out there. And then trying to document your experience doing that is particularly fun for me. So here we are. You're photographing out there in the white. It can be pretty tricky if you haven't photographed in the snow before. We can give you some tips as far as exposure, your white balance. Sometimes, like in the case of this image here, it's nice to use polarizers to get rid of some of the glare. And we can even do fun things for people that have particular lenses. Like here, I'm shooting with a 20mm lens. We get these big sunbursts here, which really add a lot of character to the images. And so we're here to help you with all of that in these scenes when you're out there taking images, making images. I did want to mention, I apologize, I just ripped this off of the NatHab website. This is an example of our North American safari vehicles. And I think it's worth knowing that we have these for you. There are 12 people only 12 people on these photo trips, and then we have 2 photo guides, and we have 2 different vans, so 6 people per van. Each van could fit 10 people. So that means there's plenty of room for you, your equipment, all your warm gear. Some guests even bring 2 bags with them, like 1 bag of just sort of things for the day and another bag of photography equipment. There's plenty of room for all that and plenty of room to work out of these vehicles. You'll also notice that we have these custom-made roof hatches. So these are the only vehicles like this in North America, and that gives us the ability to do 2 things. One is to stay warm in the vehicles and still be able to take images of animals, which works particularly well, of course, when you have longer lenses and you're shooting at a long distance. It's not great, as Brad was mentioning, to be, sort of looking down on the heads of animals all the time. But when animals are out in meadows and at a little bit of a distance, it's really nice because we can shoot and we can still be warm. The other thing that these do sometimes is we actually can use the vehicles as a blind. There are plenty of places in the park where the animals are used to the people, and generally road corridors end up being places where the animals are very used to being people. If you were to walk out into the meadow, for instance, from the road, the animals would run away because that's not a place that you're usually at. So we shoot a lot from the side of the road in the turnoffs, but sometimes we're in those places like you can see here where there's these big snowbanks. We're in an area that there isn't parking, there aren't hiking trails, and the animals aren't used to people being on the ground, so that we can use these as a blind for photography. Another thing that's really unique about this winter photography, and this is special to the Photo Pro trips, we don't do this on the regular photo expeditions. We actually have a helicopter ride scheduled for you all, and we get to fly over the park. Now, this picture, I should qualify, was taken in the springtime. So the helicopter, you can see green grass starting to come out. That would not be the case during the Photo Pro trips. We're doing it in the middle of the winter. But the other pictures you can see, we're up above. You have these wonderful lodgepole forests that give some nice graphic pictures, some very, very unique angles on things. And then I don't personally have any images of Grand Prismatic Spring, but of course that big, famous, colorful, round spring with all the tendrils coming out, and it's orange and yellow and blue. That is the primary objective for when we're flying up in these helicopters. So you can get what is a classic shot, but what is actually a quite rare shot to get. And that's because there's only a very, very finite number of flights that can be done for tourists in the park. Certain times a year, helicopters aren't allowed, and there's only 2 helicopters, not even companies, 2 helicopters, period, that can do this. And in the wintertime, most of them are landed. And so the wonderful folks in the NatHab operations department figured out all the permitting and permissions for the photo trips to go do that in a very special way in the wintertime for you all. The last thing that's really unique about this trip I thought I would talk about is that we do make time specifically for wolf photography. If you look at the map on the left-hand side, this is showing where the map, this is the latest map of 2019. It's changed a little bit for 2020, but the new maps haven't been published. The year just finished. But you can see that most of the wolf packs are in the northern range of Yellowstone National Park. And so we have 2 days, actually 2.5 days dedicated to just being up there in the northern range, and we'll be on what we call the wolf quest portion of the trip. So the wolf quest portion is characterized by early mornings and late evenings. We go out there, we participate with the wolf watching community. We have special wolf radios. We take part in the citizen science program. That's something that NatHab does year round with our wolf projects. But it gives us special access to knowing where the wolves are and how they're moving around. Now, of course, we have special knowledge. Oftentimes, we're the first ones to be locating the wolves in the morning, but there's a lot of terrain to cover. It's 53 miles across the road that spreads the northern range. We can't be in all the different places at one time. So we're in communication with everyone else that's part of that citizen science wolf watching community. And so we can find out real quick where the wolves are if we're not the first ones there. You'll have opportunities to take pictures of wolves. I have to qualify this. We usually see the wolves between a half mile and 1 mile away. That's very typical behavior of the wolves. You can see on the picture on the right that our friend Dan Hartman took, sometimes they do get closer. And it depends a lot on the wolves themselves and their own individual personalities, and also the year. Right now, we have the Junction Butte pack, which you can see in blue on the map. They've taken over the terrain of the Lamar Canyon pack as well, and they are about 35 wolves strong. It's one of the largest wolf packs that have ever been recorded. And the benefit for photography right now is that they're just owning that place. They're very bold. They're walking around. They don't have to really think about other wolves and what else is going on. They're traveling around in large groups and they feel safe. And wolf photography has been really, really good this year, and we expect that to continue for at least another year or two. To finish up here, I thought I'd just show a few more pictures, some gratuitous things, what you might be able to encounter and experience when you're there. You know, it's not just wolves and bison. You saw those pictures of the foxes. Earlier, we have bighorn sheep that we regularly encounter out there. There's a few different locations where you can find them. And of course, we know where they are, and we take some time to make opportunities for photography there. These trips, they travel not just in Yellowstone, but also down through Grand Teton. If you're familiar with the region, Bozeman to Jackson or Jackson to Bozeman, we alternate weeks, is the itinerary. So you get to see the interior of the park, you get to see the northern range, and you also get to see Grand Teton and the Elk Refuge. The Elk Refuge is fantastic. This image is taken in the Elk Refuge in the wintertime. We see 2 elk here, which is actually hard to take a picture of 2 elk. There are thousands of elk that fill up the refuge, and we go out there and we spend an entire afternoon just photographing elk when we're there. If you could see what was going on behind me when I took this picture, it's hard to isolate it would have been hard to isolate a single elk that's out there. So really, really fun imagery. The unique thing about elk is that they carry their antlers well through most of the winter time. And so we have opportunities to take pictures of them in prime form with some snow. Really, really unique opportunities that you don't get just anywhere. There's all sorts of other little things that happen as well. So Dan Hartman is a famous National Geographic photographer. When the wolves were reintroduced in 1995, it was Dan's wolf image that went up on the cover of National Geographic. And that's the same photographer whose image of a wolf I just showed you a few slides ago. And he has this wonderful little house and home up there in the woods in the pine and fir forests in the northern part of the park. And when we stay there, we visit Dan and we get to hear his perspective on wildlife photography, both in Yellowstone and as a commercial photographer. And he offers all sorts of insights, of course, wherever you want the images to go. But his land is also this incredible place, and he has wildlife blinds set up on his property where we can take images of things like this little pine marten that are out there. And we have pictures of ravens playing around in the snow. You can see this nice white background is a very natural background. It hasn't been photoshopped, and it has a little bit of snow on them, so very charismatic. And of course, the landscapes that are there. A lot of times when we're in the interior of the park and then over at Mammoth, we spend half days or full days in one case going to the famous geysers and hot springs. So here we have Mammoth, and of course we're thinking again about how to take pictures of this. You know, it's bright sun, we have reflective snow, we can do cool stuff with the sunbursts. So we're there to help you get better with your landscape photography, or to notice unique things about it. And then if you're into macro photography or close-up photography, there's plenty of opportunity to do that too. The colors of the hot springs, the shapes and the characteristic of these different geysers is really fascinating. Believe it or not, this image that's on the right-hand side, that's Old Faithful in a very unique and different way in the first morning light of the morning. So very unique, fun opportunities for photography. And then you never know where we're going to see the wildlife. You know, here's a bison that's been hanging around right in the edge of the hot springs, and you can see it stuck its head into the warmth of the spring as it was blowing up, and everything froze right onto its face. So really, really fun opportunities for that. And then you just never know as you're driving around what's even going to happen. I snapped this image very quickly out of the window of the truck as we came around the corner. These bison were just barreling down the hill. completely oblivious to us. And so while we of course aim to create a lot of opportunities for you when we're out there in the field, just as many opportunities happen unexpectedly, and we're happy to pivot and take the time to take advantage of those opportunities for you while you're there. And I believe, Court, that ends my portion of the presentation.
Fantastic. Colby, that shot of Mammoth Hot Springs was like the best shot of that I've ever seen. I have struggled to capture how amazing that is, and you nailed it. A couple of things I wanted to emphasize that I picked up from that. One is I loved your sort of mentality early on in your section about, it's snowing, let's go out and photograph snow. I feel like that is such a photo pro mentality. That's what we want to do on these groups. And the other thing you mentioned is in the vehicles, we're going to have extra space allotted for extra camera gear. We know that photo pros, people like you, are going to want to bring big prime lenses, want to bring an extra couple lenses here. These are the small little things you may not be thinking about, but we definitely have to make sure you are well equipped for these photo pro expeditions. So we're zooming back to Alaska here, right into the backside of a bear, apparently. So this is a great example where if you look on the map, it is so close to where we are looking at photos from Brad, but the landscape, the world, the bears, the photos are quite distinct. And I think that really hammers home the idea that we are gonna zero in, we're gonna immerse ourselves in very specific localized areas to get the photos of the wildlife, the features in that area, and just dive really deep. So with that, let me turn it over to Drew. I know we're gonna see a lot more fantastic photos here. Drew, one of our other lead bear guides, go ahead and take it away.
Hey guys, good to see you. It's been a long time since we've seen each other in person, but thanks for leaving me a couple minutes to talk here today, guys. So it was really great seeing those two talk about the trips, and they're both trips I've led before. And I really feel on those trips, you go out and it's really an adventure. Like you go out every day, and you see what you can find, and the trip I'm here to talk to you about today, the Season Solitude trip, is a little different in that I really think it can be summed up with just 3 words, and that is Fat Bear Week. So as you're looking through, and I'm sure some of you watching are familiar with Fat Bear Week, but it is the bear's time to shine on a national stage. And look at the dates of the trip. They are designed to go specifically right up to the start of Katmai Park's Fat Bear Week. So if you've been watching these bears online on the explore.org webcam, or if you've been watching the CNN coverage or the NPR coverage or the Fox coverage, all the networks cover this event, it really is the only postseason glory that Bears fans have to look forward to every year. And so if you've always wanted to see Hobby 435, who was the champion in 2019 and was the bear in the last image, or this year's winner 747, this is the trip for you. I can tell you all about, oh, we'll go see stunning landscapes, and yes, it is stunning. You've got fall colors, you've got mountains, you've got the red Bristol Bay sockeye salmon swimming up. But really, this trip is about the fat bears. Just to get you a little geography as we're zooming in, here's Alaska. Zoom in a little more, you've got Anchorage in the upper right, and then you've got Katmai Park and Preserve starting to come into view. And then we zoom in to a landscape scale here. You'll notice over on the right, that's where Brad was talking about. Kodiak's off the bottom right corner. So we're going to be crossing over the mountains to the Bristol Bay side of things. So I put a couple arrows on the map. On this trip, we actually stay in a fancy lodge in King Salmon. There is a lodge at Brooks, but we're going after the lodge is closed. When you think of Brooks, you think of crowds, you think of that iconic shot. We are avoiding that. We're not avoiding iconic shots, but we're avoiding that summertime July crowds. We're going in September into early October. And this is when these bears are at their absolute fattest. So we'll stay in a lodge in King Salmon, which is over there just outside the park. And then we've got float planes at our disposal. So every day we'll fly out. We never set up the itinerary this far in advance because we like to keep our options open. The place we will be going at least once will be Brooks for those fat bears. People always ask how close you can get to the bears. Generally, we do have some pretty good proximity. This is me with a famous bear called Diver, for those of you who are Brooks aficionados. Of course, this is a cardboard cutout. We don't do this with actual bears. I'd like to highlight one of the other fantastic expedition leaders on this trip, Justin Gibson. Justin and I did this trip last year, and Justin and I have known each other for a couple decades now, and we just have so much fun going out and photographing these bears. We've both been focused on bears for pretty much that whole time. So it's a great time if you've ever been on one of my trips or one of Justin's trips, or we're just kind of combining the best of both worlds on this. Now, we do give everybody waders, and we fly into Brooks. We're all wadered up. This is actually waiting for the outhouse on one of our adventures. When we're sitting there waiting for everybody in our pantaloons, our high fashion pantaloons, waders, and all of a sudden, Bear 68 comes walking through. Just looking back here, you saw Simon standing there. This is how big those bears are relative to Simon anyway. So every day, yeah, we fly out, we load up in float planes. Now, even from the float planes, we get spectacular vistas. You can see the fall colors are in full effect as we're flying out over the Bristol Bay watershed, lakes and rivers, and you'll see the transition from the cottonwoods in the river bottom to the spruce forest. It is just a stunning, stunning landscape. Now, we get out to some of these places, and it really is a lot of rolling around in the dirt, trying to get those eye-level shots. Here's a situation where these bears are fishing for spawned out salmon in a lake. So the fish have gone up into the stream and spawned, and now they're ending their life history and washed back down into the lake. So there were dozens of bears working this, the outflow of this stream. And so you'll see this guest on the left is actually using a technique that I call the Brad Josephs. So getting down low, getting even below eye level shot, looking at these bears. Think back to that oyster catcher shot. And all the time I've known Brad, I think most of the time he's actually in this position. Then we'll head back to the fancy lodge at night, and we will do photo talks. We will do editing. We will go through some of the photos from the day and relive the glory. And while we're out there, we're not just looking for your standard issue bear shot. We will actually seek out those challenging, like, backlit scenarios. You can really make fine art photography, backlit, eye level. The possibilities are really limitless in terms of what you can get, and it's all with the backdrop of the beautiful Brooks vistas, the fall colors, and of course the fat bears. While we're at Brooks itself, we do utilize the platform. Like, this is Bear 747, who was the grand champion of Fat Bear Week this year. Fish for those late season reds, and this is taken just at relatively close proximity as he's down below the Brooks platform. We'll do some editing in the evenings. We'll talk about how to convert your photos to black and white. We'll talk about how to shoot at shallow depths of field. And really, this is not necessarily about making you shoot like me or Justin. This is working with your already established photographic skills so that you can take your photography to the next level. And we also like to send people home with a marketable portfolio. You know, we get back just a few days before Fat Bear Week starts, and that's the time when those national media outlets are looking for footage. They want that shot of the champion bear. The potential to get images out on social media or even traditional news media are very real as you walk out of Fat Bear Week. So if you'd like to get some more updates or just follow along, you can follow my Instagram. I've been posting some fat bears. I was editing up some photos for this webinar and just been posting some recently. So check it out on Instagram, and we'll have some more fat bear stuff coming up.
Drew, that was awesome. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, a couple of things that really hit home. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right here as we kind of move into the next step of the presentation. But yeah, a couple of things that come to mind there is, well, the last thing you said about, having that knowledge of knowing like, yeah, this could turn you into the pro photographer that you're looking for. You could, having someone that knows, which ones are the bears that you're trying to photograph, the most coveted bears. Something you said early also really resonated with me is that, getting that different shot. We're absolutely going to have opportunities to photograph the things in front of us and get the best photo in front of us, but seeking out the different things, that backlit bear, the different perspectives, things like what Colby was showing with his ultra wide, very shallow depth of field lenses with the starbursts, or sunbursts in that case. There's so much we can learn from these guys. And I want to just sort of summarize by saying, we'd love to have you join us. I fully admit that this program will not be for everyone out there. We know that. This is for someone that's looking for, the ultimate immersion in wildlife photography, the smallest groups, the most flexibility. In some cases, you saw relatively unplanned itineraries, but that's what gives us ultimate flexibility and gives us the ultimate ability to get those really interesting shots that we don't know exactly what we're going to get going into the trips. But being with the pros, being with the wildlife biologists that know intimately the wolf packs and the movements, with the bear guides and bear biologists that know exactly where to set up the stools and the seats to watch the bears as they move up and down river. There's a lot going on here. So with all that being said, let me do a quick plug for another photo resource with Natural Habitat Adventures. We have here the naturalphotographer.org. Lots of great resources. If you are looking to get to that intermediate or advanced level photographer we're looking for to join these Photo Pro trips, lots of great resources on specific animals, specific techniques, you name it, it is here. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and move into the Q&A section. And Drew, surprise, I stole one of your photos. So I wanted to really highlight that that next level shot. What is the different shot that you going with yourself or going with another photo tour? I mean, what might you just completely miss and be ultimately disappointed to not go home with? And this is definitely one of those photos. Another quick thing I'll show on the bottom there, if you are interested in learning more about our webinar program, our daily dose, we have daily programs on nature and wildlife, and then we have at least one program weekly that is about nature photography. So again, if you're wanting to up your skills, check that out. And then that little logo in the bottom left, I showed that in a few of my first slides. We're going to start putting that on our website. If you see that next to one of the trips, it's one of our Photo Pro expeditions. This new lineup, this new suite of trips that we're running here. You're going to be one of these guys or one of our great pro photo photographers. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and head into some question time.
Sounds great, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Man, what a pleasure it was to see all of these images and hear the stories from these destinations. I know I was inspired, and from the comments that I've gotten so far here, I can tell a lot of others were too. So I want to start off with a couple of questions that are related on making sure that folks are the right fit for these trips. So a couple people asked about their level of camera or their level of experience and whether it's appropriate for Photo Pro adventures. So would a point and shoot camera be okay on these tours? Or if you have a bridge camera, would that be appropriate for the Photo Pro trips? And finally, all related here, would a non-pro with a Sony digital camera with a 50x zoom get enough from this trip to be worth it? Can you teach technique with this type of camera? Is that equipment right for these trips?
Yeah, great question. I think if I can just quickly start off with, actually no, Colby, if you had your hand up, go ahead and start off, Colby, and I'll jump in.
Well, I was going to say this. I'm a big believer that the best camera you have is the one that's with you. And at the end of the day, it's more about your creative vision. And what's most important about these trips is that we're specifically here to be taking images. So if you're like, oh, I have a bridge camera, or I have a point and shoot camera, and I like to take pictures in between all the natural history stuff because it's sort of fun, our regular photo trips may be for you. If you want to talk a lot about technical aspects of things, you want to figure out how to get those blurry, looks to the back of, in the back of an image, take a picture of the bear with the background blurred off, like you saw Drew doing. We spend a lot of time on that kind of stuff. And so a lot of the sort of banter that's going to occur on these trips is going to be around cameras like this, where you're really working with a lot of different settings, you're understanding those settings, we're sharing, there's going to be a lot of sort of technical jargon and talking. And then remember that in the evenings, you know, we're doing photo clinics as well on all of these trips. And so it's going to be things about editing and this and that. And so there's going to be expectation that a lot of people are shooting in a raw format and understand what that is, because, you know, when you think about photography as a creative art, you know, as best described by Ansel Adams, of course, the famous landscape photography, he wrote 2 books. One is on the negative and one is on the print. And we're out there with our cameras in the field and we're taking digital negatives. And then later on in the evening, we're working on our prints, we're developing and we're editing those things, and we need raw formats in order to do that properly.
Yeah, brilliant answer. I couldn't have said it better. Just to kind of reemphasize a couple of points. I mean, I think that that last thing that you said about indeed the do you edit your photos? I think we're often looking for a line in the sand. I think if you do not edit your photos, our traditional photo programs might be a bit better for you, because you're just going to lose some of the extra special content that we're delivering during the trip. If you are shooting on one of the automatic modes in the camera, those are fantastic modes. I praise them in my webinars and in my instruction for the normal photo trips. However, you're going to lose a lot because we're going to be talking probably immediately about aperture priority mode, immediately about shutter speed priority mode, and so on and so forth. So I think Natural Habitat as a company is perfect for folks that have bridge cameras or point and shoots, but I do expect that most people will have more of the technical stuff, more of the DSLRs, more of the mirrorless cameras. That all being said, if you are using a point and shoot and you just like the compact nature of it, if you're using one of the bridge cameras and you're like, yeah, I already shoot on full manual and I'm already publishing and so on and so forth, talk to us. That we definitely want to entertain those questions for sure. But great answer, Colby. Anybody have anything else to add before we move on to another question there?
Ted, if you want to show my screen just to do a slideshow for the rest of the things, I'm ready. Just let me know.
Cool. Coming your way right now. All right, next question. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. You spoke a little bit about this Court, but we have one viewer who doesn't have much experience with Lightroom. Would you recommend taking a course ahead of one of these trips, or do you have other prerequisites in terms of skills or knowledge that would be helpful to get people ready to join one of these trips?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that you would be served best if you had a bit of knowledge, a bit of experience in Lightroom and Photoshop already. Again, I'm very hesitant to give like super hard and fast prerequisites because a lot like Colby started by saying is, the best camera is the one you have with you. You don't have to have all those skills in order to have that pro mentality, in order to be the one that wants to get out there during the snow days and lay on your stomach and photograph underneath a bear's nose. But that all being said, we are expecting to have, nightly or oftentimes conversations over dinner, over a PowerPoint presentation with the editing skills. And I think that if you have those skills already, either by enlisting in your own course, doing some researching online, there's some fantastic YouTube videos. There may be a point, since these trips are a little bit in the future, we might come out with some of our own preparatory materials. That Natural Photographer website does have some great stuff on camera tips and techniques as far as aperture settings and all that kind of stuff. So I think you absolutely have the tools at your disposal that you don't have to pay for. You don't have to drive to a class and sit in a college classroom at night to get those. But I think you're going to get a heck of a lot more out of the trip if you were to come with some of those things right off the bat.
Great, thank you. One more sort of preparatory question, and then we'll get into some specifics on some of these destinations. What size lenses are recommended, and is it possible to borrow lenses? Does that have a set of lenses that may be available on offer? And somewhat related, should folks bring a laptop to do editing in the evenings?
I'm going to turn this over to each guy to maybe say a few tips on their favorite lenses, but I'll start off by saying we do have a program with lens rental companies. You'll actually see discount codes if you were to go with like lensrentals.com to rent a lens before the trip. These lenses are usually not in location. You'd have to order that to your home ahead of time. That's the best way to be safe. The last thing you want to do is arrive and be like, oh, it's scheduled to arrive in 3 days and we're leaving Anchorage tomorrow. But nevertheless, we do have things set up for that, and we're going to be growing our commitment, growing our promise to facilitating more and more advice on that. But let's have the guides chime in on maybe in the order presentations. Brad, what's your go-to for your trip?
I think probably if I had to just pick one for this trip, it probably would be a 100 to 400. And you know, all the camera companies have their own version of a high quality 100, 400. But that being said, some of my best images have been with a 70 to 200, the super sharp, with a low aperture. You can get a really shallow depth of field. But most recently, I've been shooting a 200 to 600 Sony, and that's how I've been able to get very, very sharp images, like super up close. So, but I think that, you know, on this trip, you'll be able to, it doesn't matter what lens you have on, you're going to get awesome stuff, even if it's just a wide angle. So, but I think 100, 400 if you just had to pick one.
Well, maybe Colby next.
The good news is we don't have to just pick one. I think you know, lens choice comes a lot down to your own photographic style, what you're looking for. Certainly on these trips, wildlife is a big part of why we're signing up, and so Brad's recommendations should probably show up on every trip. I traditionally carried around a 24 to 70 all of the time. I still bring that with me a fair amount, but I actually carry a 20 millimeter and a 400 more often than not these days. And the reason for that is, one is because I like to stay light when I'm traveling. I don't want to haul a bunch of stuff around. And two, you know, we basically see, like, our natural vision is 50 to 70 millimeters, right? Somewhere in there. And that's also the most common lens that most people have. And it's the most common sort of focal length for your point and shoot cameras and all of these other things. And to me, as a creative photographer, that means everybody's getting those shots. And so I've actually backed away from from using those. If I'm using my 24 to 70 now, it's for a very specific reason. And otherwise, I find that the far ends of the focal range gives a more unique view. Drew.
So I can't disagree with the 100 to 400 being kind of the classic go-to. It's portable. It doesn't necessarily need a tripod with it. It allows you to turn around quickly if something's happening behind you. That being said, all of the images that I displayed today were taken with a 600 millimeter lens on a micro four thirds system. So it is a light portable 600. And one of the things we talk about is workarounds for having a fixed lens. So we do a lot of photo stitching, how to get an environmental shot with workaround for just having that long lens. The other one I'll use frequently would be the equivalent of an 80 to 300, but my go-to is the 600. And to get more, I'll stitch it in and use some computational photography.
Fantastic. And that cues me. We have revamped and upgraded all of our pro photo guide bios, including these three fine gentlemen, on the NatHab website. So if you Google their name and natural habitat, or if you go to our natural habitat website and go to expedition leader bios, we actually have their kit, their camera kit that they bring with them on trips. So you might, oh yeah, I've been considering getting that 70 to 300, or yeah, which version of the 100 to 400 do they have? Which camera platform are they on? We have all that on the website, so you can do a little bit of research if you'd like. That all being said, for each one of these trips, we will have detailed advice written by one of us or all of us for the trip that will say, well, you really want to have at least a 100 to 400, or else you're not going to get the shots you hope for. Or, you know, one lens you don't want to forget is maybe a nifty 50, or maybe an ultra wide angle lens for this trip. So we're going to have those details in the packet you receive, basically with your packing list. We take it that seriously and that detailed.
Great, thanks, Court. We've got a question from one of our audience members that says, I'm an experienced Capture One user rather than the traditional Photoshop or Lightroom. Would I be able to participate in the editing component of the trips using my laptop, using that Capture One program?
Yeah, I'll quickly jump in. Oh yeah, Drew has it. Yeah, go for it.
Yes, you can. My advice on that would be just be really strong in the concepts. because there's a lot of overlap in what Lightroom and Capture One can do. So, on my trips, I'm going to be using Lightroom because that is what I use mostly, and I think it's what most people use. But Capture One, it's easy to have those concepts overlap. So if there's something you need to brush up on, there's always a 12-year-old kid on YouTube who will show you how to do it. And as long as you're up to speed with those ideas and know how to implement them in Capture One, it will be no issue.
Yeah, I fully agree. There are, so I did a photo processing webinar a couple months ago, and I counted, there are now 22 different widely used photo processing programs out there. Although Photoshop, Adobe Camera Raw, and Lightroom are some of the most well-known names, Capture One's very much up there. GIMP is high up there. There are a few others. Exactly what Drew said. If you are proficient in the program and know where to find contrast, know where to find like the paintbrush tool, like the detailed contrast or sharpening, or know how to do that sort of stuff, I would probably say not many guides, especially nature and wildlife guides, go into like the real hardcore Photoshop where you're like cloning a penguin and like putting more penguins in the scene. Like, we don't do that stuff in Photoshop. We're doing saturation, contrast, clarity, exposure, white balance, that sort of stuff, and also doing spot treatments of that. I'd say that's the majority. So yeah, you'd be just fine. And that goes for any other photo editing program out there.
Cool. Thanks, gentlemen. We have we're running out of time here. I've got 2 more quick questions for you all. First off, what other Photo Pro destinations are planned in the next few years?
Cool. Well, if you caught that website that I showed on one of my last slides, or just Google Natural Habitat Adventures Photo Pro Expeditions, it'll get you right there. We're very Googleable. As far as I understand, we've got in the next couple of years, we've got a Kenya adventure. We have a Madagascar adventure. We've got Botswana in Namibia. We have got, Ted, you might actually be more versed in this than I, but I know we've got a couple others. What am I missing there?
Let's go to the website real quick and have a look there. You've mentioned most of them. So most of them that we have under development right now are the ones that Court just mentioned. But we are looking, we're really excited about the initial success of this program as we have launched it. A lot of really great engagement with these programs already. The one, in addition to what Court mentioned, that we have on the docket at the moment is a Uganda primates photography adventure. But beyond that, we're cooking up a lot of stuff. So we'll let you know. And as Court said, if you go to nathab.com/photopro, that's where you'll be able to see all of those. So
yeah,
go ahead, Court.
Oh, I was gonna say, in my opinion, nothing is off limits as far as Photo Pro at some point. It's just more of a question as to how rapidly we roll them out, because we're being very detailed, very meticulous with them. We want these to be, absolutely fantastic and perfect in every way. But the best way really is, keep in touch with our website. We send out communications. You always have a direct line of communication with someone in the office. If you want to ask someone to email you when there are new programs that come out, the best way is to email that address that you see on the pictures here that Brad's cycling through.
And Dana from our audience was kind enough to remind me that we also have a snow leopard strip that's coming up next year.
That's what I was missing. Yeah, photographing snow leopards in northern India, that is not to be missed. So definitely keep in touch with us.
Cool. All right, final question here, and you covered this a little bit, but I think the clarity of it is really important to close with. Will NatHab still continue to offer photo tours in addition to these photo pro trips, and can you just really clearly outline the difference between those two?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really important. So 100% yes, we will absolutely continue to offer the photo tours. We will expand them. We will do more of them. It's not a shrinking program. It's not going away anywhere. This is just simply another level or two up in terms of the level of photo instruction, the amount of time spent photographing, the flexibility. A little bit, I'll use the word rigorous, frankly. Like some of the rigors that it takes to get these super duper high level photos would be for the Photo Pro program. For our more or less classic photo tours, they're going to replicate more of the traditional NatHab itinerary, which is very wildlife observation focused, very immersive in itself, but a little bit more well-rounded. It's a little bit more about the experience. There's still a lot of photo instruction to be had. I would say, some of those qualifiers we talked about, Colby talked about, I kind of chimed in after, of where that line in the sand might be. The photo programs that we have in general are you know, normal photo tours are still fantastic. There's a lot you're going to learn from them. So no, short answer, they're not going anywhere. But does anybody want to add anything more on kind of the differentiators there? I probably forgot something that I already said earlier in the presentation that was important.
It's maybe worth mentioning that, you know, in a big way, these Photo Pro trips are, you know, they are an extension of that regular photo program in response to what we heard from a lot of guests. You know, on the regular photo trips, we tend to get a mixed group of people. And even folks that are traveling with the photographer. And so those trips are broadly appealing. And we're out there, you know, with the animals and doing the thing, whatever's on the itinerary, and taking pictures at the same time and helping you get good pictures of those things. The Photo Pro trips, like, we're really trying to speak to the people that are like, yeah, I wish there was more time for learning about this before everybody else got bored and wanted to move on, right? And so sort of some of the in-between times when the animals aren't up, you know, singing and dancing, we're really focusing on this instead of going into interpretation and other things. And so it's to speak to these people that really just want that photography focus in a way that's very different than the natural history aspect of what NatHab really does. And so we think having these two different types of programs can speak to the different type of photographer and photo user, the different type of experience that people are looking for. Is your trip experience going to be successful if you get good photographs, or do you want a successful, you know, meaningful experience where you have photographs to remember your own personal experience? And I think that's a way to differentiate.
Yeah, and one
Let's
other
talk
thing.
more.
Oh, go ahead, Drew.
Let's talk more rock. We just go out, we get her done.
Yeah, and one thing that I said, which you know, is probably worth noting is you know, we may be doing the extra photo interpretation, the extra photo explanation at the expense of the traditional natural history, the expense of the traditional kind of like biology talks or geology talks or botany, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we're with some of the best expedition leaders in the business, so that stuff is still totally going to come out. But I think it's a matter of where your priorities are.
Cool, excellent. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. What a fantastic webinar we had here today. There are a handful of questions we didn't have a chance to get to, and I apologize to those of you that we haven't been able to answer those, but we're going to wrap it up here. Court, I'll hand it over to you for any closing comments. And once again, I want to thank Drew, Colby, Brad, and Court very much for their enthusiasm and just fantastic images to get us all excited to get out there.
Absolutely. Well, hey guys, this is a pleasure. This has been something that's been building for a long time now. I mean, I know a lot of us have been in photography for so long, but it's such a pleasure to see this come to fruition, this big next level of photo adventures, photo expeditions. So we cordially invite you, get in contact with our office if you feel like you're on the fence and not quite sure if there's a similar option that's just the photo tour version. You know, just talk to us. It's an open conversation. We've got a lot to offer, more coming your way, and looking forward to seeing you in the field.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. It was a real treat to have you all here with us today. I want to thank all of you for joining. Just a reminder that you will receive a follow-up email with a recording of this webinar. So if you want to share it with somebody, or you want to be able to replay certain pieces of it, you'll see it in your email as well as on our website. Please join us for the next set of Daily Dose webinars. We've got Brad tomorrow. And a couple other great presenters later this week. So thanks for joining. I wish you all a great day. This will conclude the webinar. Cheers.